Welcome back to ESBR Boxing, folks. I'm joined by the one, the only Owen McKendry, and we're talking about seemingly unavoidable man to talk about. Feels as if we talk about him every few months in this channel. Jake Paul fighting this weekend, depending on when you're watching this, against Nate Diaz. Owen, pleasure to have you on, mate. Great to discuss this with you. Jake Paul's first fight back since the first loss of his professional boxing journey, I suppose we'll call it, to Tommy Fury, and in against Nate Diaz. Now, Owen, you're a man as myself. It almost feels illegal, but you like MMA as well as boxing. You've watched a lot of Nate Diaz, I'm sure. First of all, how do you think Nate Diaz, obviously never had a professional boxing fight before, for anyone who doesn't maybe know about him as an MMA fighter, what do you think he's going to bring to the boxing ring, first of all?
I really haven't got a clue because Nate Diaz, towards the start of his career, he was I don't want to say a good boxer, but he was composed. He was quite light on his feet. But the Nate Diaz towards the end of his career, so when he's in 5-round fights, you may as well just give the first round to his opponent before you even watch them step into the cage, because he's a slow starter. But the thing with Diaz is he just doesn't stop. So it'd be interesting to see how he fares in boxing, because I know we'll have to use the example of like McGregor, not famous for his fitness, but hired massively in a boxing ring. So it'll be interesting to see how Diaz does that, because he is quite renowned for just slugging it for round 3, round 4, round 5, and he's got a great gas tank. But the one thing I'm intrigued with is, I know the way MMA mitts are completely different to boxing gloves, but Nate Diaz has got heavy scar tissue on his face from all his UFC fights. I can't remember the last Nate Diaz fight I've seen where he didn't have some form of cut. Not necessarily where his face was completely busted open, but he's always, especially around sort of eyelids, it's very heavy scar tissue. So the main thing for me I'm intrigued to see is, after Jake Paul lands a few, does his face just open up? And then when his face opens up, is it Nate Diaz that smells blood and just comes at Jake Paul? Or is it Diaz going to not do much, just sort of fanny around for rounds 1, 2, and 3, and then sort of try and bring it to him?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the question I always have with these Jake Paul fights, maybe the Tommy Fury on the side, is like, how much ambition are these boys really coming in there with? Like, it's huge payday. I'd imagine, maybe McGregor fights aside, certainly the rematch, this will be the biggest payday of Diaz's career. I would think so. Like, and you know what I mean? Obviously, to a certain extent, the fighting instinct never leaves you, but I remember in Diaz's like last UFC fight, was the Edwards one his last one?
I believe so, yeah.
It was either Edwards or Mas. I think it was actually the Masvidal fight, not the Edwards one. That BMF title fight, and like some of his body language to me looked like he wanted to quit, like sort of doing like walk offs and stuff. And a lot of people doubt putting that down to like bravado and stuff, but to me that's not what it looked like. And if it wasn't Nate Diaz and this reputation he has, I would think like that's a fellow who doesn't really want to be in there. So I question sort of how much ambition he'll have really in there. I know he's a striker. He's not like a Ben Askren who was like a wrestler. Diaz is a striker. I don't think he's the most fluid. He's not really fast twitch, but as you say, sort of know him for like his cardio, getting rough and ready. And I mean, we hope he'll stick it on, Jake Paul. I suppose an interesting topic in this fight is Jake Paul, like, over the past sort of 12, 18, 24 months, whatever it's been, I think he genuinely has believed that he's going to become a world champion. He's going to fight Canelo, this and that. How do you think maybe the impact mentally of suffering that loss, do you think that's going to damage his ego? Is there going to be any sort of rebuilding in here? Or do you think, I don't know, it's a hard one to say, but like, do you think he's sort of showing maybe mentally that he can handle a loss and come back?
I think it's massive, because he built it up to be like, he was calling out Canelo, and he genuinely, there was a point where it was like, I was questioning to myself, like, is this just trying to earn a payday, or does he actually believe that he is going to be a world champion? So it got to the point where I was questioning myself, but I was leaning towards the fact, like, is he delusional? Because I genuinely think this bloke thinks he can win a world title. So the loss to Tommy Fury, the back and forth, the build up, the rescheduling of the fight, there was a lot going on. where to lose that fight, especially after he dropped Tommy Fury, I think it is a massive loss to take. Everyone expected the KSI fight, which probably would have made more money somehow. But I think there's two sides to the coin here as well, because I've got it noted down, so I just had a look. So Diaz's last fight was the Tony Ferguson win. So Diaz is coming into it on a win against someone who we spoke before this video is finished in the UFC. Great career Tony Ferguson had, but he's done. So the last win that Nate Diaz has got is against someone that was finished, whereas Jake Paul's coming into it on the back of probably the biggest loss he'll ever have in his boxing career, where I do think it's going to take its toll on him, but I think he's picked a fairly easy-ish to an extent. I mean, Diaz could surprise me, but I think he's picked someone who isn't going to throw 1,001 punches at him, and he's picked someone who he can put the pressure on. So I think it will play a part, which is why I don't think he's gone straight for that KSI fight or the Fury rematch. I do think it will play a bit of a part, yeah.
Judging from what you're saying there, I think I have a fair idea what your prediction for this one might be. But I'll ask you anyway. I looked a while ago. I've not looked recently, but imagine there hasn't been too much of a shift. But I think Jake Paul's a pretty clear betting favourite for this one. Is that something you would agree with? Do you see the problem child getting it back in the winner column this weekend?
Definitely. I think this is just a big payday for Diaz. He's been to hell and back in the UFC. He's provided MMA fans with some unbelievable nights and some unbelievable fights. And you just got to question, at his age, the punishment he's taken, the amount of blood that he's lost fighting. It's like, what do you actually want to gain out of this other than, do you know what, I'm just going to get a massive payday. I think Jake Paul, rightly so, is the favourite, because we've all seen Diaz's fighting style. When he was the younger Nate Diaz, it's interesting. He carried decent power. He offered a lot more than a current Nate Diaz offers. And to be honest, I've seen him, like, when he first had the build up to the McGregor first fight, he wanted it badly. Like you say McGregor, obviously, that you've taken everything I've worked for, blah, 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 blah. Now it just seems it's like, yeah, I'll just get paid easy money. If I win, I win. If I lose, I lose. At the end of the day, I'm getting a fat paycheck. So I think it'd be an injustice, which is a mental sentence, but it'd be an injustice if Jake Paul weren't the favourite.
Do you think Jake Paul stops him?
I'm in two minds. I think it's, some of the things I'm thinking and saying to myself, it sounds mental saying, like, I think if Jake Paul wants to stop him and puts it on him enough, I think he can. He definitely wins, but I'm sort of toying between stoppage and points, because realistically, if Diaz has come for the paycheck, Jake Paul can just jab and move for the night, and it's just an easy night's work. But I think Nate Diaz, is he going to really be that game? Which is making me think, I think I would back the stoppage. Yeah, probably get decent odds on it as well.
I'd be the same as you, mate, to be honest. I think he'll stop him. I don't think Nate Diaz should be fighting anymore, to be honest, in any capacity. I know I don't want to be disrespectful, he's never been like the brightest tool or the most articulate fella. Like, you see recent clips of him and interviews from him, and it's not like, as I say, he's not always been the most eloquent, but he almost seems to like struggle to get his words out now and like sort of trails off in sentences. I think it's really bad. I don't know how it's not spoken more of it. I don't think he should be fighting, to be honest. And like, I know this isn't the highest level fight he's ever been in, but it's like just boxing. It's just, I know he can punch to the body as well, but just shots to the head. And Jake Paul's heavy-handed. Like, he's not Deontay Wilder or Adonis Stevenson at cruiserweight, but like, he can punch a bit, and I think you'll stop him. It's different when you're fighting someone who like can punch properly, and your stance, you're not worried about takedowns and that, and they can get full leverage into their shots. And I think, be it maybe, as you alluded to, like scar tissue opening up, or just Diaz thinking, you know what, fuck this. This doesn't affect my health. You can say, I've made enough money. I don't need to be in here with some, what is Paul, 26, 27-year-old. I've had enough here. So I think you'll stop him. We'll run with the assumption that Jake Paul wins, as me, you, and the bookmakers all seem to think he will. What's next? You mentioned KSI fight. That's the big one in the influencer space. The Tommy Fury rematch. I know there might still be contractual options in that, although it looks like Tommy Fury KSI might actually be announced tonight as we're recording this. What do you think will be next for Jake Paul if he does get past Nate Diaz?
See, I don't know, because they all talk about fighting real boxers. Tommy Fury is a real boxer. I mean, there'll probably be people in the comments that'll call me out saying.
I agree with you.
So Jake Paul, fair play to him. He took the Fury fight. It's a real boxer. He landed some punches. He dropped him. It's official. You can't deny it. KSI seems like he talks about how good he is, his power. I think he calls himself, is it the Nigerian Nightmare? Something like that.
Nightmare, I think.
Something like that. So he talks as well like he believes he could be a world champion, but he doesn't actually seem interested in fighting any other boxers than Tommy Fury. So the only thing I can really see happening is Jake Paul inevitably beats Nate Diaz. Fury fights KSI. Jake Paul fights the winner of that, whether that's the Fury rematch or the KSI, which would be among the influencer scene. That's your Mayweather Pacquiao's. That's your Joshua Furies. Within the influencer scene, they're the two biggest names. I dread to think how many numbers it'd do. It's mental to say it, but
huge.
It would trump probably 95% of boxing fights,
and the rest,
which is incredible. But yeah, I think it makes sense, really. Winner, let's be honest, Jake Paul will beat Nate Diaz. If he doesn't, he can't really fight again. So it's almost a high risk, low reward, but also high risk. Sort of, it's a bit both sides, because it's a big reward at the same time, because he'll get the winner of Fury KSI, but if he loses, it's like you ain't getting another fight, because realistically, where is there for you to go? So ideally, it'd be sort of that scenario that pans out, and I do think Fury will beat KSI, so it'll be the Jake Paul Tommy Fury rematch. And when will we see that? Summer next year, maybe the start of next year. Depends if they try and take it to a stadium or not, really.
Yeah, mate, as you said, the numbers for some of those fights are fucking astronomical. They would be like the money them boys would make for fighting each other would make you sick. But we'll not turn it into that sort of video. We'll not start ranting. Owen, thanks very much for hopping on, mate. Sort of in a way looking forward to watch this. It's always a bit of a freak show. It's like watching a car crash, sort of. So I'm looking forward to watching it. I'm sure we'll catch up after the fight. If you've made it this far, folks, like, comment who you think is going to win, whatever. If you think it's good, if it's bad, whatever, let us know. Subscribe to ESBR Boxing. We'll wrap it up there. Cheers.
Pleasure as always.